What's up, y'all? Steven here, aka Bike Bonk Biff, aka Triple B, which I'm certainly gonna make a thing. We just finished stage 2 of the SISU racing series. It was the Bologna, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly this time trial. Super tough course, short, but the climb at the end is brutal. Let's take a look at how everything went. It'll be about an 8-minute video recapping what we did, bringing in some of my tactics, and at the end, let's take a look at everything, see where we are in the GC, and go from there. Let's check it out. As I previously stated, this is stage 2 of the SISU Pinkki series. There are 7 total, and this time trial, it's hard to get excited for because I know the pain is coming. There's just nothing you can do about it. You're gonna push yourself to your absolute limit. The Bologna course, which is only accessible in events, is pretty tricky. Flat into an extremely steep climb. You want to make sure to pace yourself very well because while the course itself is only about 8 kilometers long, the climb itself is 231 meters and it maxes out at 16.2%. Needless to say, it's very steep. Having very little to no experience with time trials, let alone riding anything on this course, I didn't really know how to pace this. Luckily for us, Zwift Insider had an article that really went through how you should pace this, whether you were doing 1 lap or 2. Essentially, very simple. You want to put in your biggest effort when it matters most and when you can get the most efficient return, which is on the very steep gradient. That means sitting below threshold on the flats. The formatting for this is also interesting because typically in a time trial race on Zwift, riders will be released at 15-second intervals, whether that's in groups or individually. I have a feeling because this turnout is so great, we have 90 riders, that's why it's kind of just a mass start. Either way, there's no draft, so the grouping itself doesn't matter. Again, this is not a course I'm familiar with. The last time I actually rode it was in 2021 on an Ascenders ride, and it was a nice leisurely effort that time. It was actually 2 laps, so my experience on Zwift and all the racing I do doesn't even matter because I've never really raced this course. Which is also kind of nice. You don't get that feeling very often anymore on Zwift, especially if you've been around as long as I have on the platform. If you watched last year's Tour de France, you will also probably recognize this climb. I believe it was stage 2 of the Tour de France. They probably went up this twice actually, and I know that the Giro did time trials on this years ago as well. Checking in on my power numbers, since we're about halfway through the race at this point, a lot of yellow, which is good. I don't like how I have that red at the beginning. I think that pumped up my legs a little bit more than we needed to, because now that we're getting to this climb, my heart rate has already been creeping up to 180. Not insane, but the flashing inclines, that's where you really gotta push, not on these little kickers here. As we approach the Arco de Monticello, which you can see right in the center of the screen, that is the start of the climb. It's where the effort gets really intense and those flashing elevation gains, that's when you really need to push. That's where you get the bang for your buck. Coming into this, we're sitting 41st of 91. I'm hoping to jump about 10 riders or so, but you can see all the power profiles along the right-hand side are well over 4 watts per kilogram. Everybody's pulling in extremely solid digs. The climb itself is also pretty long. We're looking at what ends up being a category 3 climb, a distance of roughly 1.3 miles, average gradient of 9.6%, maxes out at 16.2%, and the elevation gain is 650 feet. That is a lot for a short distance. But at the same time, it's really cool because this climb has been used in cycling races since the early 1900s. In fact, just back in 2019, Primoz took the win on the opening stage of the Giro d'Italia here. As for my pacing, I was really hoping to be able to hold around 330 watts. Obviously, that's not happening. It's always easier said than done, especially because when you try and figure out your pacing, you're always looking at a power graph, and I tend to believe that power graph is kind of your best case scenario. It doesn't take into account your fatigue, and I had raced the day before, so we're sitting below where we are. But as we approach the halfway point of this climb, we're still sitting above 300 watts, and our power numbers aren't dipping too much into the yellow. My goal is really to go about as hard as I can on these extremely steep sections, and then when there is a little bit of a level off, I kind of ease off a little bit. I don't know if that's the best way to play this, but quite frankly, with the way my legs are feeling, I kind of had to do that. A half a mile left, and you can see my power is starting to dip a little bit. I keep trying to give strong digs, but my heart rate's really climbing closer and closer to 190. And after doing this for 16 minutes, it's not easy. We are slowly gaining on the rider in front of us as well. They're kind of dancing about 5 and 6 seconds in front of us. So let's go back to real time and we'll see if we can make the catch and have a nice strong finish to today's time trial.
To the line. Oh, Lord. Oh. Oh my God.
Honestly, my legs are hurting after watching that final effort again. Absolutely brutal. On the segments for both Strava, the climb, and the TT, 100% effort, so we obviously paced that pretty well, pushing ourselves to our limits. 11th place in our grouping, 34th overall. Not exactly where I wanted to be, but we are just outside the top 10 for the GC. So Friday's race is going to be a big one for us. We're going to see some faces old and new. Should be very exciting. So make sure you tune in for that. And if you enjoyed this review, please consider liking the video, leaving a comment, perhaps even subscribing, and I will see you on Friday. Cheers.